and look around. Do you still understand the space? Yeah. When you close it open, we don't see much difference. Okay. So, Callewaert, but this presentation is actually about creating presence, okay, the architectural side for games and experience. Now, I could have the title called Game is Low-Key for Room Scale VR. I can explain what it all means. The benefit of listening to this presentation is on the end, you will be able to create your VR game more 3D. The feeling is 3D, you're connected to it. And you will be able to explain to others what is one eye VR. What is understanding with one eye understanding. And one eye, we call that monocular cues. Okay? Now, room scale VR. Basically, when you want to make it 3D, the environment, you want to be an architect. And you want to create actually a nice environment. Okay? An environment that creates presence. And presence means, when you put on the device on, that you are connected to it. That you really think it's real, that you feel connected to it, that you understand the space. Okay. Now, the word presence in VR, a lot of people think it's new because you put the device on and it's the first time you see 3D. No. The word presence exists already a long time. And it's called Helios Loci. Even the Greek, the Romans, the Egyptians were aware of that. Understanding when you walk in a building that I feel the building. No. If something is real, for virtual reality, it doesn't matter for our eyes. For our eyes, it's just a sensor input. Our eyes see what it is and goes to our brain. Okay? Our eyes are the longest extension from our brain. So, if some things are real here, some things are not, I've forgotten which one are real, but it doesn't matter. For my eye, it's real. And have to be close. Okay. Anybody knows this building? No? Yeah? Who has been there?
No.
Yeah? Okay. It's a very known building in Rome. Okay? When you walk inside there and you look at the dome, you're really gonna feel the dome. You're gonna say, wow, how big. No, it's the same in VR. How do you create that effect to feel the shape? And the reason why I'm bringing up real examples is because real and VR are the same. Anybody knows this building? Eh? Which country? Greece, yes. When you stand in front of this building, you're going to say, wow, how massive and beautiful. But how did they do that? How did they achieve that? And I can tell you, when you go on the internet, you're going to see a lot of lies. They make up stories. Anybody know this? What's it? Tarawando. Yeah. Wow. First time in all my presentations, somebody knows it. Come on, an applause for you. That's impressive. I've shown this presentation all over the United States and everybody, huh? Callewaert is a very known architect who uses light and shading to understand the volume. We're going to talk about explain how that works. Anybody knows this place? St. Peter's Basilica, the square. Okay. If you watch the movies like Angels and Demons, they use that. Anybody been there? Been? What did you do there? You walk around, you watch things. We're going to talk about why is that. No, is there a language in architecture that we can use to create presence? Okay? But before we do that, how do we see 3D? And this is important to understand. If we can understand how we can see, we can use it to make it more 3D. There's three parts to it. And part one is super easy. It's because you have two eyes. That's why stereopsy. And it's a behavior that exists already 540 million years. It's a long time. And it's really strange. All animals and humans have horizontal. There's nobody vertical. Stereopsy is Latin for a solid view. Animals, we don't know actually how they see. That's why we call them depth perception, depth sensation, and humans are depth perception. We see 3D because it's really simple. Left eye and right eye are slightly bit different. It's also really strange. When I look, I cannot see that one picture of my left eye or the right picture. I never can do that. I have to ridiculously close my eye. My brain makes it 3D somehow. Okay? Now, when you were born, we see it probably upside down. We don't know when you flip your eyes. You know, the eyes, your vision and your brain. But it's 540 million years old and it's still flexible somehow. This is a test. Anybody seen this test? No? Yeah, seen it? Okay. So it's a test done in the early 1800s where you can drive a foot on and you see upside down. And very fast you will be able to grab objects, to drive, to bike. No, I wouldn't recommend it to do it today in the traffic of Seoul. That might be a big accident. In games such as for Oculus, they use that. They know you're still flexible. When you start the game, you look forward. When you rotate 45 degrees, you actually rotate 9 degrees in the game. And you don't get sick. Oh, I should not have shown that. Anyway, in Unity there's an API, and they actually can show a left eye and a right eye totally different. And you could show maybe this room and the other eye, another room. But the problem, you're going to get really, really sick. We only did the API because for a sniper game or a pirate game where you close one eye. And don't try to make your player sick. Now part 2. We have 2 eyes, and we have another way to understand the space, because we have 1 eye. Okay, and 1 eye is very interesting. Okay. There are things that we're born with and things we're not born with. We're born with the ability to, when we see an object, you see it from the background and you can grab it. You don't see it as one surface. It's really strange. But are there things born or not born with? It's really difficult to know. This is a test that they did. You put a glass plate here, you put the baby here. Will the baby walk to the mother? No. The moment a kid has motor skills to move, it understands depth. And that's it. But it's a lifelong journey to really understand depth. No. Here's a nice example. Which one is closer? You don't know. You have to read the text. It's 40,000 kilometers further this one. If you don't know the object, it's really hard. No. You know it's fake because you know the object. You know the identity of the rock. No. How long does it take when a baby is born to have a very good depth perception and hand-eye coordination? How long will it take, you think? A month? 2 months? 3 months? 10 months? A year? 2 years? 3 years? It's about 13 years. Look at little kids playing football. They hit the head, they fall, because they're still learning the depth perception. Now when we look at an image like this, you see it as 3D. But it's pure one-eye information. I can close one or the other, it doesn't matter. It's flat image, it's one-eye information. Now why do I see it as 3D? Why do I understand it? Well, there's multiple reasons. One, we have the stop signs. A familiar object that I know the size, and when I see how much projectile on my eye, I know how far it is. There's more elements in that. Like this one. The color of the objects, the further they go, they lose color. So you can write a shader. Remove the color of the object, the further it goes in VR. Because you learn over the years, the older you get, you understand, okay, that object is so far. Okay. Now there's also, here, texture gradient. It's understanding the flowers and the grass. What is the gradient texture? Now what we see is sometimes in VR games, they put a texture, but the grading is incorrectly done. So the problem is that you're telling to your brain, it's so close, but the texture says it's so far. But then you get sick after a while. You cannot play the game for a long time. Now, we use that in real life, if you understand that, to exaggerate it. And everybody knows this building? It's here in Korea, in Seoul. What they've done is this, is very interesting. The paint, they painted here, along the way. Here, there's less color in the paint than here. Because your brain is already trained. But if that was painted the same color, you would already lose color here because it's far. Now I'm exaggerating it, and you think the building is higher than what it is. Very smart. So understanding one-eye information helps you to bring out 3D. That's why in our tutorials, we try to use objects that we know, such as a human. But it's not enough in this. This is why the environment doesn't give me much information. Like this. How can I know how far an object is, how big this object is? There's no information in this scene that gives me any sensation of depth. And sometimes adding an object to it will help you, like the weapon here. Adds you to better understand the size of everything. But it's not enough. Now there's other elements why I see 3D. One of them is perspective. I learn perspective to see that and then understand what it is, how far an object is. What do you see? Yeah, one person sees a cube and the rest, what do you see? I hope you see all a cube, yeah? If you see a circle, it's time to go to school or to the doctor, okay? You see a cube because you learn to see it as a cube. And also in our society, it's perspective. But some native cultures will not see that. They will see a star. Now look here. One eye information, one image. Beautiful. The background, they put it wider to lose color, to feeling of that. They use perspective. They use known objects to help you understand the space. But there's something more they use. There's so much things they use. Look here. Look at the tiles. They use the tiles. And it's really interesting because, look at this, absolute size. We are born with this. If you have the same object and you scale it, you perceive it as depth. But it's not, it's flat. But you see it as 3D because you're born with that behavior. If something is incorrectly scaled in an environment, look at that. It's exactly the same person size. But depending on where it's placed, you understand. Okay, that's why if you don't have enough information, you don't get it. Your brain tricks you. So molecular depth cues, understanding with one eye the information around you. Okay, it's really interesting. We use 11 cues to understand with one eye when I close my eye and I don't move. There's 11 elements I use to understand the depth. Then we have perspective, relative size, familiar size, absolute size, gradient, all those things that we use to understand depth. Now, my question is this: if you have two eyes, how many elements do my two eyes use? Anybody knows? Okay, let's look at it quickly. One is because I have two eyes. I have a left eye and a right eye, stereopsy. That's one. Number two is converse. It's a very interesting one. If an object is closer than 10 meters in VR or in real life, my eyes will cross. And here, my eyes, the moment it's closer than, when it's far, my eyes look straight. When it comes closer than 10 meters, my eyes converse. Now what does that mean? That my muscles are pulled by my nerve. You learn over time, if my muscle is pulled so much or my nerve is so busy, that means that object is so close. And that's it. We only use two elements, two eyes to see 3D. But you use 11 with one eye. That's why one eye information and understanding one eye for VR is so important. Okay, there's actually a third one called shadow stereopsy, and you can find it online. but it doesn't exist in real life. It doesn't happen. So 2 verses 11. 1, if you make no VR, and you don't use enough one-eye information, what are you going to get? What do you see? A wall or a lake? Because you don't know. Your eyes like, huh? There is not enough information. It is actually a wall. But it's so hard to see. Another problem. Is he floating? No, guys. This is a shadow of a flag behind you. But why do you think it's floating? There's one element missing that we have not talked about why you see 3D. It's part 3. It's because you can move. If you could move, you would see that the shadow is not moving with the object. We only see elements like this because you cannot move. So that means if you make a VR for mobile who has not head tracking, you really have to make sure that you rely on those 11 cues of one eye to make it work, or you get effects like this. No. Look, if you don't have enough cues, you have problems. Hey guy, look at that, what's going on there? It's because he cannot move. You think that that's a picture of the skirt here, and he's just sitting there like this. Or like this. And that's why parallaxing is so important. The background moves slower than the foreground. Okay. That's why in VR, when they put a headset on, sometimes I see they put one object there, or a background and one object. No, put other objects in the back, so the moment the slide is moving, you have a parallaxing going on of the object back and forth, and that gives you so much depth information. Okay, here's a nice example of this. Here they have multiple columns behind each other. Okay? Now when you walk, and you walk here to this spot, or this spot, or this spot, you will see the columns behind each other, perfectly behind each other. Now what they did is they especially put those objects there, so you never can get them perfectly aligned. But when you walk around, you're going to have a parallaxing walking of those columns back and moving. And this is the only way to really understand the space and the shape of this object. That's why they place it there, so you don't have like a boring view. And that drives the people to walk around to understand the space. Same in VR. How will you make a player move? If you can do it to better understand the space. Like Gothic churches were specially designed that you walk forward, otherwise you don't understand their presence. Now, look, how can we use that information to make it more 3D, to create that presence? Okay? With one-eye information, that's what we're going to work with now. And we're going to use like perspective, abstract science, a combination of those objects to understand how we can bring things to life. Okay, the dome I showed you earlier on. Okay. Anybody knows what the name is of an opening like that? It's called Oculus. The eye, not DK2 or Gear VR. Okay. Now, why do we see 3D here? Look, this is a drawing of another dome. It's a drawing. But I still already start to see it as 3D because, oh shoot, because we use perspective. We use those things. But actually, it's not the same size, you just scale it. And that gives me the illusion of depth. Now there's more to it, and that becomes interesting. We use perspective in the dome. We line it. Hey, this is one is smaller than real, but it's not perspective. We exaggerate, it's perspective, so you think it's 3D. But not here. Look at the shape. Eh? Let's say it's a cube, a square. What do you see? A square. No, when we draw in it, you start to see. What do you start to see? You start to see depth. Because our brains are wired like that to say the same object scaled as 3D, as depth. But it's flat. I can prove it to you. See? It's flat. I didn't make a hole here. Okay? That wide information is so powerful to make my two eyes more 3D. Now with the light coming in and the shading, it becomes really 3D. That gives the illusion that the dome, because we make those little lines here that go just a little bit deeper, it gives the illusion that the dome is much bigger than it is. But now they're very smart in some places. Think about this. Instead of scaling it equal, they actually scale it a little bit more. And that gives you the illusion of more depth, and that gives you the illusion that the dome is even bigger. Very smartly done. We call that perspective distortion. Now, okay, this building. When you ever go in the morning, there's not much people there, and look up, and stand in front of it. And you're going to say, this building is so perfectly balanced. And then you go on the internet to learn why it is. And they're going to tell you because it's the golden ratio. Anybody heard about the golden ratio? Okay, they say that on the internet. And they say that all those buildings use the golden ratio. They say that Notre Dame is using the golden ratio. Even my body, they say, is using the golden ratio. That was me yesterday. Okay? You don't believe me? That is true, eh? Just say yes. If you go to, anybody knows the website Gamma Sutra? And Gamma Sutra is a very known website for news in the industry of games. And they actually have an article right now about this that says use it in video games. Use the golden ratio, a so defined property is perfect. They say it's usually in all those things here. But then I have one question for you. If the golden ratio is actually the reason why those buildings are true, then you can tell me, and everybody will tell me exactly, this is the square, the rectangle I use the most, I like the most. Well, you're all looking, huh? Because there is no scientific proof done ever. So, hold that chapter of the golden ratio, put it in the garbage bin. I can prove it to you here now really fast that there's no golden ratio in this building. It's perfect distortion. Look. That is not true. This is the reality. This building is not even flat, it's not even square. It's built with an arch. But because my eye, the perspective, makes it straight, I look as a square. Even the distances between the pillars, the further it goes, are wider. Because thanks to perspective, it makes it look it's all equal. This building is a masterpiece of perspective distortion to make it look perfect. Anybody knows this one? No? It's one of the first computers from Steve Jobs. It's called the Cube. But it's not a cube, because the back is 1 millimeter wider than the front. And when you look at it, it becomes in the eye a cube. Okay, so we saw a few elements that you can use relative size and perspective to bring things out. But also a shadow and shading. They help us understand this space. In this case, I don't see the left side, but I understand it. I don't even see the objects. This helps me really understand the size and the height of those arches, or make the illusion of something. And that's why, thanks to shadow and shading, that this dome becomes really alive. It's a combination of those elements. Okay, but now we're going to get a little bit more scientific and then really scientific. This is a nice problem here we have. The columns look flat. You agree? They don't look really shaped in 3D. Why is that? We have a converse and a stereopsy problem. Okay, a converse problem is the moment in VR or in real life, an object is further than 10 meters. My eye sensor, my nerves, and my muscle do not converse anymore. That means I purely rely on one aspect as having the two eyes, a left eye and a right eye to see 3D. But there's another problem. The further I go, my left eye and my right eye image becomes the same, almost. So how can I make something like that in VR when it goes further? How can you still bring out the 3D? That's when you rely pure on your one eye information coming in 3D. The Egyptians and the Romans understood that. When you look from far to the temples, you still see them as 3D. Even when you go far from the column, you see it. And the reason is this. Very smartly done. One-eye information. They made those carvings specific because the shadow. A little bit shadow, more shadow, more shadow, more shadow, more shadow, more shadow. This is pure one-eye information that tells me that object is round. And that's the power of one eye. That's why architects like Callewaert, who do rough shapes, but understand how to use lighting and shape to bring the shape out. That's why in Unity we have a light baking, Global Evangelist, able to bring the shape out. Now here, what is shadow stereopsy? Shadow stereopsy really proves that shadows helps us to understand 3D. Okay. This can only be done in a Gear VR or an Oculus or in one of the VR. Look, this image of the lamp is exactly the same in the left eye and the right eye. In real life, you cannot do that. But what they've done is they put the shadow from the left eye and here the shadow of the right eye. The strange thing is, you will see it as 3D. Even the object is not 3D, but the shadow makes it 3D for you. That's why it's a scientific proof that shadow is so important in VR. Okay? No motion. The parallaxing. More than 40% of the people are very sick when they move forward. When they move forward in VR and you stand still, you get very sick. So, accelerating, strafing, turning, all those things makes us sick. And there's enough data now done to really prove this all. Okay. Now the basic is that in VR, make your speed like the real speed. When you walk, don't make it super fast, don't make it slow. The real speed will help you. Don't touch the camera. What does that mean? If I look around in the player, with a script, all of the blue controls my camera to look at a certain direction, you get super sick. That means when you do cutscenes in video games, you totally have to redesign it that the player has a full control over the camera. Okay, and acceleration in video games, like when you stand still and you accelerate or you deaccelerate, makes us very sick. So try to avoid that at any cost. So we look at the alternatives. How can we move? Okay, and one is we don't want to have motion and rotation in there. Now teleportation is super important. And as I'm going to show you this morning, you look at an area, click, and you go to there. Okay? Now, what is that? I'm going to explain a little bit more and the differences what you can do. One is you look at a certain area, click, you control it, and you say you go there. Okay? And that's what we saw this morning. You look at somewhere. Okay, come on. You look at a certain area and you blink and you go to it. And you're there. Okay, no. The problem is we don't have parallaxing. There's nothing moving. So another way is this. You click in an area, and you confirm, and you go super fast to it. In 1.5 milliseconds, 1.5 seconds. That time your brain cannot catch up to get sick. So that's what you end up with. You're going to look at a certain area, and you're going to go, and you're going to have for 2, 3, 4 frames parallaxing going on. You have control over the camera, you're not going to get sick, but you build up the sense of the space. Okay, now teleportation is very complicated. And here is a nice example that I found of a way of teleporting. You look in a mirror and you see the other scene in there, and you go to the other side even, and you see it from that direction, the scene. So I found that a very nice way, and then you click and you walk in it, and you go into space. So to help you to teleport to a different scene. Everything in this is still in the research phase. People are trying to find ways, how can I go to another scene without getting sick and still understand it. And I like this one really much. Oops, and I go back and I'm there and I see it. Okay. Now, sometimes people say it's because the spirit is beautiful down. Okay. Like this building is super down. It's in Manchester. What they did, look, they say, oh, the people have the feeling to walk in and it's spiritual. It's an arts and craft building from Adolf Loos. Well, no, look, he uses repetitions to bring you in there, to feel that depth in there. They all used and did. This architect wrote, the only way to understand really space is to drink a lot of alcohol. I don't know if it's true. Okay. Look at here. The shading and the lighting, that much makes the building 3D. Okay. But sometimes I have a funny story. Anybody knows this building? It's a very known building, and it's a church in France, but there's a copy in China, don't worry. Okay? The shapes of this, do you know what they are? He has a dolphin laying next to him, and he used his pencil. That's her thigh. He used this, and then afterwards he says spiritual. Yeah, no, it's his dolphin. Okay. No. Lessons learned. You feel the dome because you use light, repetition, and the depth feeling, and all those things. Use your one-eye information. People make up stories. They say it's really beautiful because of the golden reach. It's not true. Perspective distortion. You can use it to bring things out. Some people said that was the golden ratio. It's a pile of rocks for me. Moving in VR in real life is very important to better understand the space. When really in VR, it's really complicated and really think how you're going to move around. Use light and shadow to bring it more out. But my biggest point of advice is this: when you make a VR game, it's really simple. When you make it, put your hardware on and close one eye. When you understand the space in one eye, then it works with two eyes perfectly. Then it brings it out. But if you have a hard time to understand with one eye, you're throwing 12 cues out versus 2. That's my advice. So, one eye information. Now, one thing that's really cool, I sent this a little screenshot of our VR and VR, and you actually will be able to use Unity and VR to make it. But if you do it, close one eye and see if it works. Okay. Now, you can always stay in touch with me. Connect me with your Facebook, LinkedIn, PayPal if you really want. LinkedIn. My email is Carl. Here it's here. Carl@unity3.com, and that's my Twitter. So follow me because I like to come back to Korea, and I will be going back very soon. So, 감사합니다.